Hey, it's Timmy the Monkey! How are you, boy? And welcome to Rubber Chicken with a podcast in the middle. In this episode, we check in with some news about the newly announced return to Monkey Island and have an initial discussion about our recent experiences replaying the fourth game in the Monkey Island series, Escape from Monkey Island. Also, stay tuned until the end when we ride the madly rotating Buccaneer. Okay, well, we'll start with a bit of news. Grumpy Gamer, Ron's blog, is back online, and he's made a new post, When I Made Another Monkey Island. And he's talking about in that...
the response to...
he's responding to the response of various things about...
Return to Monkey Island.
Yeah, and things about the artwork and points he made a long time ago that he said... he just wrote in a bit of a hurry as a blog post, and he shouldn't be judged by those things.
No, and it's worth pointing out as well that Ron said many times now that Thimbleweed Park kind of covered a lot of the stuff that he wanted to do when he wrote that blog post as well.
Yeah.
So he's reiterated multiple times we shouldn't expect that list would still be current.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer that has to even occur. And also, it's weird that we live in this time where you get such instant feedback from just a launch trailer.
Yeah, it's funny. Trailer. It actually reminds me of when, and this was so long ago, when Curse was announced.
Yep.
And there was a backlash against the art in that when that came out as well. But I think there was less visibility about that kind of thing because the internet was a lot newer and it was a lot harder for anyone to just post their opinion online unless you knew how to mark up a website yourself or something like that.
Yeah, I think there were places you could chat, but you and I definitely weren't aware of them.
Yeah, no, we were way too young to be in like AOL chat rooms or anything like that.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Which is nice, a nice place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this whole thing with the artwork's just blown way out of proportion. Like,
he talks about he's only made one pixel art game. The others were just state of the art at the time, which they were. I remember them looking amazing at the time.
Yeah, and they still look great. But I think he makes a really good point about the idea that if this new game was just using pixel art, it would be seen as being a retro game.
Yeah.
Which I think is really valid. And I think this is actually kind of relevant to something that we're going to be talking about later today as well. The idea of what the expectations in the market are about the visuals of a video game.
Yeah, and how graphics can age.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what... Like, this is almost something that's not worth talking about, isn't it?
Oh, no, I don't feel like it's really relevant at all.
No, I mean, as I've said before, I love pixel art, but I'm really here for a good game, and I also won't judge the artwork by the very small amount of information we've received to this point. That would be jumping to conclusions. That would be leaping to conclusions.
It's just kind of not relevant. It's not part of it. It's not the puzzle design, and it's not the story and atmosphere. He talks about the music. It's not ad-lib or Sound Blaster.
Yeah, and we don't even know what Guybrush looks like yet.
No.
People are assuming it's going to be like that little bit of artwork that was done by the lead artist years and years ago. You know, people just leaping to assumptions based on that. I really think that this is... I mean, it's typical. Fans will always find something to complain about.
I know. That's why I realise we're doing this, but that's why I kind of tend to remove myself from fans talking about things. He does say, actually, that Disney have been really good to work with.
Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't they be?
I think kind of the expectation previously would be that they'd be quite controlling.
Yeah, I mean, this just doesn't have the kind of weight riding on it that like the Star Wars sequel trilogy did or something like that.
Well, that's really nice, just handing over the keys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that covers that off.
Yeah.
That's the news.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really been any other news.
No, I don't think so. Oh, do we want to... Sorry, can we just briefly talk about what he said, his very early idea about Monkey Island 3, which we talked about before? Guybrush chases the demon pirate LeChuck to hell, and Stan is there with only ideas. Do you think that that means then that in Ron's initial idea for Monkey Island 3, Stan died in Monkey Island 2 because he nailed him into the coffin?
Died of starvation or suffocated.
Because that's really dark, if that's what he was imagining.
That also points out the fact that Ron didn't really have an idea for Monkey Island 3.
No, that Guybrush Goes to Hell thing that he mentioned in his interview with the Video Game History Foundation was basically the whole thing.
Yeah, that's it. That's the idea. And it's just a kernel of an idea he did. He didn't have this whole fleshed out trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of nice to hear that at last, actually, that we didn't miss out on this, amazing idea in 1993.
Yeah, exactly. He even says that even had they made it then, it wouldn't have come out like the idea that he had at the start.
Yeah, exactly. And we discussed that, I think, in the first episode meeting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that puts that to bed now.
God, I don't think it will, but let's just pretend that...
Just remove ourselves from it.
Yeah.
There's trouble at the governor's mansion! Let's go!
Alright, so moving right along, for whatever reason, you and I, in our anticipation of the new game, have been playing Escape.
Yep. It's been time to go back. to return to Escape to Monkey Island. Escape from Monkey Island, sorry.
And I just thought, let's just start by talking about our initial... Let's just start by talking about our memories of maybe Escape being announced and getting it.
Yeah.
So, do you remember when Escape was announced?
Oh, I have very vague memories. My strongest memory is seeing the box on the shelf in the store when it had just come out.
We bought it in Big W.
It had been 3 years since Curse. I was probably getting close to 11 years old. The years that had elapsed between Curse and Escape may as well have been forever from the point of view of an 8 to 11-year-old. And yeah, I think I was just like, oh, cool, they made another Monkey Island game, and it's in 3D.
I remember we had seen screenshots and I believe a trailer.
Okay, I don't remember that at all.
I've got the box in front of me. The URL was monkey4.lucasarts.com.
Oh, okay.
I'm using for some reason.
That's cool.
Now in scurvy-inducing 3D.
Yeah.
I remember being disappointed that there was no big fleshed-out manual inside.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. There's a little square black and white CD dual case insert, right? Or something like that.
That's all there is, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't have the big, lovely, glossy manual that Curse came with.
No, and that was kind of one of the best bits of Curse when we first got it.
This was the point at which games were starting. This was the very beginning, I think, of games starting to move away from that big box distribution
and I missed the
model.
Big box.
Yeah, it'd still be a few games would still come out in a big box for a few years, but DVD was on the way, and we were moving more and more towards that DVD style packaging.
Yeah, well, this is on 2 discs.
Yeah.
And 'tis an offbeat adventure of piratey proportions.
I remember that.
And I agree to that. I agree with that to an extent.
So yeah, what else do you remember about?
I remember being online, seeing the screenshots. Mm-hmm. I remember being excited. The Charles L. Charles thing. I remember that character, and then I remember it not being a big surprise when it turned out he was LeChuck.
No.
But as I say, I was 13 when we got this. I remember buying it or getting it for Christmas, and Did we? We didn't even have a PC at the time that could play it.
Yeah, no, we didn't have a computer that ran Windows.
Yeah, so I initially played it at a friend's house,
Hmm.
and we played up onto a puzzle on Luca Island, one that you and I discussed recently, actually,
Yeah.
when you have to figure out in Deadeye Dave's shop how to turn those little wheels with symbols on them.
Yep.
That was the point we got up to, and I remember my friend's quote. This quote was, "This is monotonous," and and we logged off.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I don't think we went back to it. I mean, I went back on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the cover, it being kind of cartoonish and funny, but I didn't think it was as cool as the Curse cover.
Yeah, no,
I
it's not
always
quite
liked
as
the image
exciting.
of no. I like the image of Guybrush with the duck on his shoulder. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Every character on the front is from the game,
Yes.
as opposed to, say, the secret cover, which it
Yeah.
kind of apes a little
Some
bit.
made-up pirates on it and stuff.
Yeah.
The duck in Escape is like the chicken in
Yeah.
Curse. It's not actually very important, but shows up in a lot of the
No.
marketing
There is one
material.
point where you pick a duck.
Yeah.
Pick up a duck.
Put up and
Yeah.
you carry it around with you. I
Yeah.
seem to remember liking, because my favourite was already Monkey Island 2, I seem to remember liking that Guybrush was back in a big coat again. That was something that appealed to my 11-year-old sensibilities, was that
Yeah, for some reason
Guybrush
it
had
felt
gotten his flair back after Curse.
It felt like natural progression that he was wearing a red coat, but also this is the game where we have costume changes for Guybrush.
Yeah, yeah. The only game to this point where, apart from putting on a dress in LeChuck's Revenge, I think, is pretty much the only time that that's happened. Yeah, it's funny thinking back, like all those criticisms you hear about the game, like the controls, the graphics, monkey combat, which we can talk about more, and so on. That stuff didn't really. When you're a kid, you don't care about that stuff, right? You're like, yay, more Monkey Island.
Yeah.
and it's interesting to think back with all these games, but especially the later ones, as if that still means anything, is how they didn't seem like Escape didn't seem like the supposed bad Monkey Island game that it has a reputation for being. When I was a kid, I just thought it was another Monkey Island game.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's something we can reflect on as adults and with time having passed as to whether it is as bad as it has reputation.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, I haven't finished replaying it, but I would say no, it's not as bad as its reputation. Like, no, of course, I don't think it's as good as the first three, but it's not, by the standards of a lot of games from that era, the controls are clunky, yes, the graphics are dated, yes, but it's functional, it's not broken. And again, yes, it has bugs, etc. But this was still a LucasArts product that was produced in-house and had a certain degree of quality control applied to it.
Yeah, and I compare it to Tales in that way, where it feels kind of above and beyond. It feels like it's a big effort, this game.
Yeah.
There's tons of dialogue.
Yeah.
The artwork's great.
This feels like, what was at the time. This was a big budget blockbuster AAA adventure game compared to Tales, which was closer to. It feels, whether it was true or not, more like a kind of mid-budget game made by a mid-budget company kind of thing.
Yeah, it feels very Telltale.
For better or worse, yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels like this is a game that had a lot of time and care and resources poured into it, regardless of what the outcome of that was.
Yeah, that's right. And very much functions as a sequel to Curse.
Sequel to Curse, sequel to Secret in some respects.
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
Kind of that return, the soft reboot kind of thing almost. Back to things we've seen before. This is the point where it gets a bit more incestuous.
Yeah, a bit navel gazy.
Yeah,
There's a lot, we go back to Melee Island, we meet Carla, Otis, and Meathook again. We go back to Monkey Island, we meet Herman Toothrod again.
yeah,
Characters who hadn't been in Curse. There's a lot of stuff from Curse is kind of swept away as well. It's like, oh, what happened to LeChuck? He just broke out of the ice and he destroyed the amusement park, and there's no trace of it left whatsoever. Elaine and Guybrush are married, but like that's pretty much the only kind of plot point from Curse that really informs Escape in any significant way.
yeah. And this is only meant to take place a few weeks after Curse, I believe.
Yeah, like 3 months later or something
Yeah.
along those lines. Yeah.
The other thing is, this is kind of the one, because it brings all these old characters back, it kind of makes it more dependent on those things when it's not just Guybrush and Yes Dan turns up.
Yeah, I feel like this would be a bit inaccessible if you hadn't played Secret. Obviously we had, so it was like, oh wow, we're back on Melee Island. Oh, Carla and Otis,
Yeah. It's like we're back on Melee Island, yet something is missing.
In what sense?
Well, just a certain atmosphere, I think.
I think, Escape, if Escape is lacking in one aspect, it's that it's not terribly atmospheric compared to what had come before. There are exceptions, like we mentioned Nut and Atoll being a good exception to that, but Escape feels very light.
Yes. Yeah, Monkey Light. I'd just like to point out at this point that we're going to kind of get really stuck into these games later.
Yeah, we're going to kind of go into the details, and the idea of this conversation was to have a more of a general, what do we remember and what are our kind of renewed impressions of the game, 22 years later. And I haven't played it in probably about 15 years or
it's
something.
A while for me as well.
Yeah. So it's been interesting to go back.
Did you forget much?
Well, yeah, this is the thing I think I was saying to you. I don't think I understood a lot of the puzzles in the first place when I played Escape. I played Escape a few times, and I'm pretty sure that I've used a walkthrough pretty heavily. I feel like back in the sort of 90s, there was not as much stigma attached to using a walkthrough as I think maybe I attached to it now. Like, I would not have considered using a walkthrough for Thimbleweed Park. I got through that game by myself with, one hint from you was the only thing. Whereas back when I was a kid playing this, and another big one for me, and this is actually from pretty much the same time, was Zelda Majora's Mask, which has some really difficult dungeons in it if you're a kid.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, just look up a walkthrough. I know exactly what to do.
Yeah, it's more about finishing the game for some reason.
Yeah, so I think from that perspective, the game felt somewhat fresh to me because I think as an adult, I understand the story better and the logic of the puzzles makes more sense. Not that it necessarily completely makes sense. I could never go back, though, to these puzzles and do them entirely fresh because there were still bits and pieces that I remembered of most of what I've played so far. But I think as I've gotten up to Jambalaya Island, my memory has gotten pretty hazy about what I'm meant to do. So I think by the time I get up to Monkey, I'm going to have no memory at all. But I'll have to report back when I get back to it.
Okay, because I kind of just breezed through it. I think I might have played it more back in the day than you, because I played this probably just as much as I kind of played Curse. I just played it over and over and over.
I think before this, I'd probably played Escape. I want to hazard a guess and say I'd played Escape 4 times before, and the 4th time I was doing a big playthrough of all the games, and I got up to Monkey Combat, and I got bored and gave up.
That was often the point I would give up as a kid. Or I kind of think, well, I know what happens from now.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're up to Jambalaya Island, Act 2.
Enter the Manatee.
Enter the Manatee, great name. What are the highlights?
Of the game so far.
Yeah,
I think
positives.
thinking back over what I've played, it sort of we talked about this before. Mists of Time Marsh is a fun puzzle, although I had a game-breaking bug occur in residual VM.
Yeah,
But
and just to get nerdy about it, I had to send you all my
yeah,
saves, so
yeah,
you didn't have to
I'd use
start from the beginning.
I'd use a save game, and otherwise I would have had to start the game from the beginning again. And who knows if
Yeah,
that would have even solved the problem, which was the
yeah,
other thing I was worried about. Mr. Time Marsh is good. I kind of like the that Luca Island has the kind of law and justice theme to
yeah.
it.
Vibe. Yeah,
It's an interesting idea. It's like, oh, we've had like, you've had the generic piratey island, and we've had the like hotel island and the party island and stuff. What if we have like the law island?
yeah. You notice that on the map, there's just all the islands. I think Dinky's on there as well when they're traveling
Yeah.
around,
Yeah,
and it
this
kind of
was trying to expand the Monkey Island world a bit further, and there are a few islands that you don't go to as well.
yeah, just to try to flesh it out a bit. I'm trying to think of my good things. I really like the music.
Yeah, the music is really good.
Yeah, like you just can't fault it. It's as good as at any point in the series.
Yeah.
There's really nice music in the harbour on Melee Island.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's kind of an accordion.
Yeah.
The way they all mix together is really nice in that kind of
Yeah.
fashion.
I really enjoyed the Scumbar music in
Yeah, that's
Escape. The music that plays in Deadeye Dave's shop is quite good as well.
Yeah,
Whichever one of the Three Stooges, as they call themselves, Land, Bajakian and McConnell, whichever one did the music for Ozzy Mandel's house, obviously incorporated
that's
strains of Waltzing Matilda
yeah.
in there,
And
which
it's
you
really
probably
nice
wouldn't
group.
get if you weren't Australian.
No, I wonder. I don't know if that has international
Yeah.
appeal. Like Ozzy's house, things like that, the detail that's gone into it, and all of that pre-rendered artwork, I don't dislike that kind of idea. Like, if that's what they had to do to get it to run, just
Yeah.
artwork, it works for me. Like, things like Ozzy's house, it's great details. I feel like that scene, we'll get into the not so good things with that scene, it's a little redundant. But yeah, like a lot of the background art in the more interesting locations and the kind of the new locations, I think it's really nice.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the room that you go down into when you look at the treasure chest.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think Pegnose Pete's hideout is quite a good setting, even though it's a bit annoying to find the entrance to it.
Nothing at all, and I like the look. I like the look of Jambalaya Island, even though I have some other problems with it. I like the fact that there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of detail. You can talk to a lot of characters. Otis is always there, and you can chat to him even though he has no holding on the
Yeah,
plot.
you can talk to both Carla and Otis and Mr. Cheese as well each time.
Yeah,
So the side characters have a little bit of story to themselves in the background.
there's something going on. Carla goes to the micro
And gets drunk, yeah.
because she's so miserable. Otis is really paranoid about going back to prison.
Yeah, I mean it's also funny that Carla and Otis are both so traumatized by this game. Sort of canonized the Carla, Otis and me took trapped on Monkey Island ending from Secret, which is purely optional in Secret itself. And yeah, the idea that they had this horribly traumatic experience escaping, but you never find out how they escaped is quite funny.
I always found that gag funny where he says, "Yes, how did you escape from Monkey Island?"
Yeah, that's kind of classic Monkey Island. The idea that they escaped somehow, but it's not really clear what they
Yeah,
did.
it
A bit
doesn't matter.
like sort of how did Guybrush and Wally get out of the manacles in, Monkey Island
Yeah,
2
it's
kind of
the thing.
thing. Just because the
Or
lights
even-
went out, they
Yeah.
escaped somehow kind of thing. And it's sort of
Escaped, yeah.
similar to that.
Yeah. Um, Herman has the boat. They just kind of just wrote that away. Oh, they go back to Melee Island.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the first game.
I was just gonna say, talking about the game's visuals, and thinking back to Days Gone By, this was a time when you couldn't make a big game that you wanted to sell well and appeal to the current market if it wasn't in 3D.
Absolutely.
I think I remember being a kid, and if I saw a game, like the cover art of a game or something, and be like, "Oh, that looks cool," and then I'd look at the gameplay and I'd be like, "Oh, it's just an old 2D platformer. Oh, it's just a side scroller or whatever." I'd be like, "I don't want to play that. That's like an old game."
It's like a baby's toy.
Yeah,
I don't really remember feeling like that.
yeah. I definitely have that memory from being a kid, and for me, it was like, I was one of those people for whom like Mario 64 was the thing that was like, this has changed gaming forever and I can never go back, which is absurd because now I love games with like 2D perspectives and simple artwork and stuff like that, and I play very few big budget kind of 3D releases and stuff, and I actually prefer 2D art to 3D art and stuff like that.
I think you kept up with it a lot longer than me because, like I've got all the old consoles and things, and I was always into the retro stuff, and I used to always be screwing around with emulators and downloading ROMs and
It took me a while to get over this kind of weird like snobbery that developed, I think, because of the advent of these new games. Like, oh, I can't go back to playing a game like, how could you play Link to the Past after when there's Ocarina of Time and stuff, and Ocarina of Time actually was another game that used 3D character models in pre-rendered environments for some parts of the game. It was a very common technique in the late 90s, early 2000s to simulate the appearance of higher graphical fidelity than was actually possible on the machines at the time. And I think it works reasonably well in Escape. I mean, the character models don't look good up close in the cutscenes. That's where they show their age the most. I think Guybrush, apart from the weird, like, flat polygon texture of the swirl in his hair, generally looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's not something I really noticed, but maybe because I'm too close to it. I've played it so many times. I don't remember it looking bad at the time.
LeChuck looks great.
Yeah.
I think it's probably because of the way the flaming beard kind of is just like a 2D animation or something, I think.
Well, LeChuck's only seen in cutscenes, right?
Pretty much, yeah. But I guess that they're all pre-rendered as well, those cutscenes. But he looks like the artwork from Curse brought into the third dimension. I think that was actually really successful.
I love the way he looks as the demon pirate in this. I think it looks amazing.
He's huge as well, and they really even amp up the tiny feet and the massive shoulders and everything like that.
I always found the zombie version, because he flits between his three versions now. That was the thing they did. I thought the zombie one was a bit of a letdown, because the zombie version in LeChuck's Revenge is kind of the best version of LeChuck. He looks so cool.
Yeah.
And in this one, he does look like a zombie, like a rotting corpse, but it doesn't look as cool as he does in LeChuck's Revenge.
No, I don't think there's been any version has quite captured what's conveyed by how he looks in the sprite in LeChuck's Revenge, because the Monkey Island 2 special edition character model of LeChuck is, in my opinion, not very good. Doesn't capture the menace of Monkey Island 2 LeChuck. But yeah, definitely Escape Demon LeChuck looks great in my view. Oh, he doesn't have the enormous hat of Curse LeChuck. He has a slightly more moderately sized hat.
Yeah.
It's funny, you can look up a picture of the character model without the beard animation, and so it's just his head floating above his shoulders with no beard at all. Looks a bit funny, but yeah, that was a successful transition, and so was Guybrush, I think, by and large.
And the voice acting and things is great. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think the voice acting is still very good. Like Dominic Armato is still great. Earl Bowen's still great. I think. What's your opinion on Charity James as Elaine? This is the only game in which Elaine is not voiced by Alexandra Boyd.
It's the other game where Elaine is American.
Yeah, because she's inexplicably British.
Sounded like 99
from Get Smart.
Get Smart. This doesn't really worry me. It's more the characterization of Elaine that I don't like.
I think I kind of see what they were going for.
Yeah.
I feel like Elaine in Escape is meant to feel probably a little bit more like Elaine from Monkey Island 2.
Yeah.
Who's a little bit
more empowered.
Yeah, is a bit less sort of romantic, has a lot less patience for Guybrush than in the other games.
Yeah. This really hammers home the fact that she loves Guybrush, but Guybrush is this buffoon.
Yeah, this is like a really goofy interpretation of Guybrush.
Yeah.
He's much more cynical in the first 3 games.
Yeah,
whereas
it took that turn here, and that was carried over to Tails.
Yeah. I think Escape and Tails Guybrush there's a distinct continuity there that's different to how he is.
Yeah.
I was thinking, actually, is there the influence of, and I don't know where I got what it was that made me think of this, but the influence of kind of, this was right at the time when you were starting to see the emergence of these post-Simpsons animated sitcoms. So like Family Guy started in 1999. Yeah, South Park. I feel like it's a similar kind of humor in some respects. Obviously a lot less kind of nasty than South Park, but the kind of these idiotic bumbling characters seem to be amped up a lot more, like the image of the stupid pirates on Melee who were just promised free beer, basically.
Yeah.
That's really, like, that seems really evocative of something like, I don't know, even The Simpsons, I guess that could have been in, but one of those shows, because Escape has this very overt satirical point that it wants to make about late 90s America.
I mean, it's almost so overt that it's stopped being satirical.
Yeah. Yeah, it just is the thing that is.
South Park is very much like that as well.
Yeah, it just is the thing that it's trying to parody in some respect.
Yeah. So yeah, it kind of just isn't parody. I guess there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of good here, but this probably brings us around. We need to talk about what's not so good. It seems like that'll be easier to talk about, even though... we'll get to a conclusion later, but so let's talk about things that really stand out as being bad.
We've talked about the visuals have not, in some respects, not aged well. There's some really rough-looking cutscenes.
Yes, some of the puzzle design, I think,
is
some of the most cryptic in the series.
Monkey Combat is the notorious one, of course.
Monkey Combat, yeah, is a bit of a grind. There's a puzzle, going back to Dead-Eye Dave, you have to open a manhole cover and there are names of people and then he wants you to tell you a story. But these two things aren't really linked, so that you can get prosthetic skin and use it as a trampoline.
Yeah, that's really weird. And I think we should point out that this was this game was developed by Sean Clark and Mike Stemley, who made Sam and Max Hit the Road for LucasArts 7 years before Escape from Monkey Island. And
Sean Clark also heavily involved in The Dig.
yes, and it really does. This feels closer to the kind of insane cartoon character logic of Sam and Max. Not that the games hadn't used cartoon logic before, because they had, but this is that really weird, like Steve Purcell-esque style of humor in some respects. I think, like, the idea that you would that a manhole cover, that initial scratch on a manhole cover would be a clue to get a piece of prosthetic skin that you'd use on that manhole cover to trampoline your way into a bank.
Yeah, you become more trying to think like an adventure game developer to solve puzzles rather than trying to think about how things would fit together plot-wise.
Yeah.
So, like, the really genius LucasArts games, the Monkey Islands and Day of the Tentacle, Fate of Atlantis, I think they really... You can get through it without thinking in that kind of illogical fashion.
Yeah, I mean, there are some weird ones, like the notorious monkey wrench puzzle in Monkey Island 2, but yeah, Sam and Max Hit the Road. Yeah. I, for my sins, have never finished without a walkthrough.
I still love that Sam and Max game, but I think there are similar kind of cryptic puzzles in both. I think the Dig's quite hard as well, but I haven't played that for ages. I should. Obviously, Monkey Combat was the hilarious parody of Mortal Kombat, which at the time wasn't even a red-hot, off-the-press reference.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat had been around for a while, and it kind of just stops the game dead.
Yeah.
You literally have to write stuff down to remember what to do. I did it the other night, and I had a big grid with all of my moves and how to change from one stance to another, just to beat like this boss character, and it's just a bit of a bore, especially on replay. I think the great thing about the Monkey Island games especially is they do have a lot of replay value because you can do a lot of exploring, get involved in the story, but this is the point where the game stops dead and you just have to get through that puzzle to continue with the game.
It is actually a bit like insult sword fighting in retrospect, because you've said before that that's a part of Secret of Monkey Island that's not as fun to play on extensive replays once you know all it, because you can get through Monkey Island, Secret of Monkey Island a couple of times and not see all of the insults, but
once you know all the answers, it's not so much funny anymore, but it's frustrating when the pirates don't give you the answers.
Yeah, you just want to, come on, just beat me in the game. I need to get
so that I can move past this.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it's hilarious to encounter, and it's great puzzle design.
I was just going to say, my understanding is that the PlayStation 2 version of Escape from Monkey Island, which neither of us have ever played, apparently had an in-game means of keeping track of monkey combat moves that the PC version doesn't have. I'd be really interested to see what that was like. Apparently, some people say that the PS2 version of Escape from Monkey Island was actually a bit better because of kind of quality of life features like that than the PC version. It was probably a bit easier to play with a controller as well, I suspect.
It's definitely easier to get running now if you had a PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
I think the control is another thing that's not so great. As you move from scene to scene, there are multiple camera angles in each room, and I think the way you describe Guybrush's movement is like a race car movement.
Yeah, I think
as long as you're pressing forward, he continues in that direction.
People often call that tank controls.
Tank controls,
it's which is most usually associated with the classic Resident Evil games, or like something like Alone in the Dark or something like that, where it's like move forward, left and right, steers your character around the screen like a tank or a car or something, where you're revolving the turret. back and
Yeah.
forth
Well,
and back to
there's only
reverse
three
and stuff.
There's only 3D goes. This has aged a lot better than those Alone in the Dark games, which I liked at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it took a little bit of getting used to the controls when I was replaying it in residual VM this time.
Yeah.
But I got used to it. I mean, it's not great, and I think it wouldn't hurt for someone to mod this to have point and click support like Double Fine did for the remaster of Grim Fandango.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that will ever be done in an official capacity. I feel like
Who knows?
this is a game that no one really cares about making
Has not
money
much
off
love
of
for.
anymore, or thinks that they would be likely to make money off of.
No.
First Alone in the Dark game came out in 1992. That's crazy. That's why that's so primitive.
Do you remember what it looks like?
Yeah, I'm looking at a screenshot now.
Okay.
But yeah, those tank controls, yeah, they haven't aged that well, and it can be awkward. The inventory is a bit cumbersome to use as well.
The combining items is better than it is in Tails, when you have to kind of put two things in a machine. But this is not about slacking off Tails.
No, I did find myself customizing the key inputs though, because I think page up, page down are used as the defaults for scrolling through.
Yeah.
Not dialogue, but verb options, action options, and I changed that to Z and X on my keyboard as a way of changing it, because I found that page up, page down, I have all my hands are all cramped over on the right side of the keyboard if I'm doing that. I'd rather control Guybrush with my right hand and do actions with my left hand, but I find I'm moving around to press U for use, P, O, etc. That does actually remind me that I like that there's the instant escape from the room you're in button if you push O, so that you're not having to manually walk Guybrush.
Well, I wonder if that was put in as a bug catcher in case Guybrush gets stuck.
Yeah, well, I've used it when he's gotten stuck in my current playthrough.
I think that's what it's for.
It makes sense.
Because I've been playing through Residual VM on Mac, and I found that if you hold Option, and you can scroll up and down in the verb actions there without having to use, because I don't have page up and down.
Okay. I just wanted to point out this isn't really a bad thing, but I just saw, and this is such an old retro thing. It's a screenshot of the installer for Escape, of the PC installer, and there's a picture of Guybrush walking forwards with his hands in his pockets, and the shadow reflected on the sandy wall behind him is a monkey, like the poster from Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace with Anakin's shadow being Vader. Like, that's LucasArts back then. There's so much referencing of their other properties.
Well, this is the 3D game before this, I suppose, was probably Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine came out around this time, did it not? It actually came out the year before.
It was 12 months before.
And you
I've
could
still
play
got the big box of that as well.
and there was a cheat to let you play as Guybrush in that and shoot rubber chickens out of your bazooka.
Yeah, I remember that. I've not revisited that in a while. I believe, again, that the console version of that is considered superior.
Yeah.
64.
Hi, the demon-fired Captain Flatletchet here with you again. The Phantom Menace game was in fact released in May 1999, while Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine was released in October later that same year.
I think you mentioned the opening is a bit uninspiring. It's kind of flat, pre-rendered stills with the theme music playing over it. There's nothing quite so spectacular as any of the animated cutscenes in Curse.
No, it does pale in comparison to Curse in that way. But I like that opening puzzle. That kind of just teaches you the controls a little bit when you're tied to the mast. I don't like the plot about Charles running in an election against Elaine. Like, that seems really hokey to me.
Well, should we talk about the plot in general as
Yeah.
something that's not
Okay.
terribly strong or particularly compelling about?
Yeah, so Elaine's been declared dead, and so they're repossessing the mansion, and they're going to knock it down and put a new one up. Aussie's trying to take over everything in the Caribbean to make money and flush out all the pirates, and they're putting together the ultimate insult in order to convert the pirates into normal people.
Yeah, it's all about finding this weapon, this voodoo artifact called the Ultimate Insult, which cripples the will of pirates that it's used upon. This is kind of this is repeated in Tales where voodoo becomes this kind of catch-all...
Yeah, magic.
Yeah, MacGuffin device or element that will allow you to basically do whatever you want. Like, oh, how come Guybrush can't leave LeGrand? Because there's a voodoo powered anklet on him, you know. Or
Yeah.
how is Aussie gonna take over the Caribbean? Oh, using a voodoo talisman. And there's a giant monkey robot under Monkey Island. I'm pretty sure they say is powered by like voodoo magic or something.
Isn't it monkey under monkey power or something? I should remember that.
Yeah. I was
Monkey
thinking
electronics or something.
this is the kind of thing that like you probably these days would not make like this people's culture into your
No.
kind of ha magic, it's piratey magic plot device thing.
Yeah, I wonder if voodoo will be left out of the new game.
Well, the thing is that voodoo was never referenced that extensively in the first two games in the first place, apart from the voodoo doll, which you know was a specific thing, but voodoo hadn't become like, you know, the Triforce from Zelda or something like that. It wasn't like mana or something.
Yeah.
You know, it hadn't reached that point where, and even Curse didn't do that.
No.
Ish. With
There was
Big Whoop, but
Big Whoop, yeah. There's always the wise old voodoo lady.
yeah, depending. I think all that idea of like voodoo this, voodoo that was kind of taken a little bit too far in Escape. It was just a bit too convenient to say, oh, everything's voodoo.
Yeah, and they make the ultimate insult into this thing. It's meant to be, I don't know, 10 times worse than Big Whoop or something.
Yeah, but it's not.
But then it's silly.
Yeah, it's not very interesting. One of the things I always also think about Escape and also Tales to a degree, this is also arguably the first time that the series does Guybrush saves the world, which I don't like because I think Guybrush motivations should be selfish. And
to an extent.
He should only care about his own career, or Elaine should be should be his main motivations. And again, Tails does this as well. Oh, Guybrush saves the world from the pox of LeChuck. You know.
It's the hero versus the supervillains.
Guybrush
is altruistic and.
And I think this is you're seeing the influence of the ever increasing popularity of fantasy games and stuff. You know, which had been around the whole time, but this is where you really start to turns into this good versus evil, save the world kind of storyline.
And I think it's inevitable with any of this kind of media that gets passed from person to person to person. It's going to get off track. People are going to bring new ideas in.
Which is why it's interesting that the game does have all this stuff about, you know, corporate takeovers and consumerism and the tourist industry. And, you know, Planet Threepwood could be a really interesting idea about Guybrush's losing control of the story of his own life. Yeah. But it's just a pun, basically.
Yeah, I know. And Planet Hollywood was popular at the time in Australia where we live, I think they've all gone. I don't know if they're still around.
Yeah, yeah, and they there were ones in here in Sydney at the time that this came out. It was pretty
Stuff like
ubiquitous.
that. If it was treated more seriously, Planet Three Put. If Guybrush walked in there and said, what the hell's going on?" You'd see things started to get really weird. There'd be cool ideas. There's a bit with Hellbeard the Unrepentant, and he's just terrified by the mention of the ultimate insult, and I really like that. I like the idea that this thing is so scary, but it's not followed through on. It just kind of becomes this silly thing, and then it turns into this big robot fight at the end.
Yeah,
Which sucks.
Yeah, which is really strange. I think, as you said before, it you could do something interesting with stuff like Planet Threepwood. Like that could be, you could easily in there have this bizarre misrepresentation of Guybrush's life.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those things that even as brief as it is, even the little dioramas on the roller coaster in Curse do a better job.
That's creepy
Of conveying, because it's this weird like history of Monkey Island kind of thing, and it's like, why the hell did LeChuck like build this roller coaster that's like history of the games kind of thing? And it's that kind of plays into this idea of what's really real, and you could do that with Planet Threepwood, but they don't. There's not much to really even look at. He's like, oh, they stole some of my clothes. They stole some of Elaine's stuff.
Well, he doesn't even really react to it.
Yeah. He should be shocked that, they were just like, oh, it's like Planet Hollywood.
Stuff like that. And making fun of Starbucks, making fun of
that was such an obvious joke back then, because it was like, Starbucks is everywhere. Although I don't think they really had Starbucks here in Australia.
I walked past one today. Actually, Starbucks is still here, but it's not its last.
But I think Starbucks came here more after this came out, and then started to die off again. I think we'd seen Starbucks overseas on family holiday before this came out, and kind of similarly with Planet Threepwood / Hollywood. I do find the micro groggery funny because craft beer is such a big thing now.
Well, it's such a big thing now. It felt like it was 20 years too early.
Yeah.
Obviously, you and I weren't drinking age then, and had no interest in that for years and years. But now, especially I know here, it's taken over.
Yeah, and that seemed very amusingly relevant in my most recent playthrough. As someone who's gone to a lot of breweries and tried lots of different weird craft beers, and as you say, seems ahead of its time. Like the microbrewing movement must have been noticeable enough in the States at the time as this kind of yuppie tourist thing that they wanted to comment on it. But now it's so much bigger than that. And microbrewing or craft beer is big business these days.
Thankfully, most of that kind of yuppie parody stuff is contained to Jambalaya Island. And I don't despise it. The only other thing is the fan servicey stuff is contained on Melee Island. The fact that we go to Melee Island and we return to Melee Island, we meet the old crew. They kind of just they're there. They don't really need to be there.
No, and you don't need references to Captain Smirk or
all that stuff.
Insult sword fighting. I don't think really needed to be.
The insult thing, the fact that apparently Ozzy is the master of insults, and then we have the insult arm wrestling, which kind of just comes out of nowhere and is
you can beat it on the first try. It just seems odd, like they wanted to put it in there to foreshadow the ultimate insult. I think is probably why it's there, but again, it would not have as much significance to a player if they hadn't played Secret. I don't think, maybe Curse, but it is an interesting game because it's so deeply in conversation with its own history, and this is only 10 years after the first game
Yeah.
came out. And when we were kids, it felt like a million years had passed between Secret and Escape, and now it just seems like that was the blink of an eye. But enough time had passed for people to become nostalgic about Secret, and for the game to want to delve into that nostalgia.
I think it felt like a long time to me, and you can see the way the technology's developed between the two.
Yeah.
The fact the other one looks old now compared to this one. Obviously, this one looks old now.
Yeah. I think this is also the point at which they were trying to make Monkey Island more of a consistent world.
Yeah. Cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Well, they use that Tri-Island area thing. They love talking about that.
Yeah, and going back to Melee, you know, it's also grounded compared to the very brief scene in Monkey Island 2. It's also straightforward. And it's the thing, I like the idea of going back to Melee as this sort of little hub island where you do like a mini puzzle before each main part. I don't mind that.
No, it's okay.
Some of it feels a little bit like padding.
I think things like jamming the lure
I
bar.
was just thinking about the lure bar, yeah. And
which is another one of those kind of yuppie.
Yeah, it's like
parodies.
apparently yuppies in the late 90s ate lots of sushi, and there's a big mockery of people who eat sushi. Go to sushi trains.
Sushi. Hilarious sushi.
Which feels a bit dated now. As someone who eats a lot of sushi, I find that. I'm like, what's wrong with sushi? Sushi's great.
I think I kind of remember from that time sushi was kind of coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you remember when cappuccino came in, you know? And there's always this reaction from the great unwashed that, this new thing's come along, and what was wrong with instant coffee?
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean that comes up really overtly with like Star Buccaneers as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, supposedly fancy coffee from the big chain.
Welcome to Stan's Real Estate Emporium.
Is this the worst appearance of Stan in the series?
Quite possibly. It's this or Tails.
It's this or Tails, yeah, but we'll have to have a think about that.
This feels like he's really just here
because they needed him to appear at some point.
Yeah, you don't even need to talk to him.
No, it's purely optional.
Yeah. Because there's a puzzle and you can solve it two different ways.
Yeah, which is very unusual, especially at this point in the series.
Yeah, and it felt like an afterthought. Okay, also, I can't believe we haven't mentioned it. The diving competition.
Oh, yeah. Pretty painful puzzle.
It's very drawn out. Even on my latest playthrough, I forgot to do stuff. I just thought,
a three-part puzzle inside part of a three-part puzzle.
Trying to figure out how to get him to put the lotion on after you've...
Oh, yeah, I haven't remembered how to do that yet. So, we're going to have a follow-up, I think.
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up.
Once we've finished. And
as I said, we're going to go in very in-depth.
Yeah, with all these games, probably.
Moment, I think.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, just from this brief initial discussion about Escape from Monkey Island, I'm very glad that it's around, and I wouldn't want it to go away.
No.
I'd rather it was here than it wasn't.
No, it's a flawed game, but I do have a certain fondness for it.
Yeah, it's made with a lot of love, a lot of work, a lot of effort. It's almost worth it for the music alone.
Yeah, that's possibly the best aspect of it.
Yeah, and it is a good adventure game. It's just not the best Monkey Island game.
Yeah, exactly. A fine way of putting it.
Let's go ride the Madly Rotating Buccaneer. Yeah.
This was my idea. We were going to discuss in depth each game, and I thought it would be fun if we instead went part by part. But instead of just stepping through from Seeker through to Tails, I thought we might spin the madly rotating Buccaneer,
Yep.
put all of the parts inside a random choice generator, which I have here with me now. And what we'll do is, in the following week, after we've decided which part has come up, we'll play that in depth,
Yep.
and then we'll have an in-depth discussion.
Yep.
And so it's all going to be out of order,
Yeah.
and hopefully it'll just make it a bit more fun than stepping through everything one thing at a time.
Yeah, definitely.
So, as we're both members of the Gamblers Club, I think we're allowed one respin if we don't get what we want.
Yeah.
Also, I think let's lock in what part we want. So what part would you like to be the result this time?
I would like, just off the top of my head, Part 3, LeChuck's Fortress.
Chuck's Fortress. Interesting.
How
I'm
about
going
you?
to go... I'm going to go The Bartender, the Thieves, His Aunt and Her Lover.
Nice.
Alright. So let's...
Spin the wheel.
And the results are in
Yep.
Dinky Island.
Hey.
Hey, so would you like to use your respin, or will we stick with Dinky
No, let's stick with Dinky Island. I mean, we kind of already talked about
Island? We talked about it in depth
this
last time.
time.
Should we spin it again just to get a bit of
You
distance
gotta
from that?
you gotta ease the wheel in.
Yeah.
You gotta get that axle comfortable.
I think you're right. All right, you're right. All right.
We can talk about Dinky Island more a bit with a bit of distance.
Yeah, I think so. Let's spin it again. Lair of the Leviathan.
Okay, I haven't played this in about
No, I haven't played
12
it either, and I'm
years.
gonna have to figure out how to get it to run, but that'll be fun.
Okay.
I managed to get Escape to run.
Yep.
All right.
Cool.
I think that's actually a good result.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
All right. Fabulous prizes to be won. So I think that's it for another podcast. Next time we'll be looking at Lair of the Leviathan, unless something more interesting comes up in between.
Which might not be
Maybe,
difficult, but yeah.
But in the meantime, thank you for listening to the Rubber Chicken with a podcast in the middle. I've been Gordon.
I'm Alistair.
And
Look behind you! A three-headed monkey!